Um, my major life crisis created and gifted me with clarity. And my language around the clarity I really got from one of the other Dadasphere speakers, actually. In 1993, me, I'm a hot babe, and I found a hot man. And I quit college to get married. My poor father, he was told, you're worse than a Masai, unatoa mtoto university, you know? But I was so into this thing, I was so into this marriage that nothing else really mattered. And I remember even telling my father that if you guys didn't let me get married, all I need is 2 witnesses, and I'm sure I could find some cleaners at All Saints Cathedral. So anyway, a great experience. But in 2005, I realized things weren't going quite well. And that became my major crisis. And the decision to walk through and eventually to exit the marriage had consequences. And the consequences were not just going to be mine. The consequences were going to impact other people. And I started wondering how I was going to make sure that these consequences were not going to be too heavy on my 2 amazing children, who are actually here. Hi, baby. So I started thinking about the losses that this decision was bringing up. I was losing a partner. I was losing a parenting partner. I was losing a sounding board. Of course, there's a financial loss. I was also losing somebody to share the blame with for the mistakes I was probably going to make with the kids. And I started asking myself, how was I going to make sure that my children are not a statistic, but an exception? And I asked myself, how can I build a blueprint legacy that would ensure that my children had the best of me and that they could continue with that best after me? So that's what I'm going to talk about today, a blueprint legacy. So initially, just before we left the States, our HR department there did a workshop on retirement planning. And one take home from that workshop was that it is very important for you to learn how to write a will. So they took us through this workshop on how to write a will, how to write a living will, as in how do you want to die, you know, if that was an option. How long do you want to be on life support and all of that kind of stuff. And then also they gave us some guidelines on how do you decide what to give which dependent. So Gitare, if the cat gets the car, you can pick up that fight with them. McKenna, you get the bike. But it was a very powerful workshop, and it helped me start to think about the fact that most women, even after separation or divorce, seldom write a will. And that's very, very critical. So I wrote my will, my living will, tried to apply the guidelines, and I felt good. I got this. It's done, right? But when I came back home, I realized as I was observing lots of my friends and their families deal with death, that even the will is not enough. Families were finding it very difficult to agree on what things were important to the people that they loved who had since passed. So I thought to myself, so that kakaratasi can be contested, and people can fight over it. And I started asking myself, so how do I really make sure that my legacy blueprint is really livable? And it brought me to the point of intentionality. I realized that for me to finish well, I had to live very intentionally. I had to be intentional in the discussions I had. Our biggest fear around the finish line is the fear of death. So I said, hey, what's the problem? Let me look this thing in the face, and let's have some discussions. It's inevitable. It is coming. So my poor parents have been put through the ringer. I've sat them down and said, you're writing your eulogy now. So they have humored me. They both have their eulogies, but I have a reason for this, the practicality of it. But it has also meant that I have had to develop the social fabric within my family and around my children very intentionally. We've had these uncomfortable conversations consistently and repeatedly until they're not uncomfortable anymore. It has meant that I've had these conversations transparently with my children. I have learned how to tell them this is where things are so that they don't discover them and fight over them later. This is what I want who to have, and this is why. I also realized that for most of us who really believe in impacting society, death then means that there are a lot of people who will lose out. The child you're sponsoring, the forest cover that you're helping to build, the camping trips that you take your nieces and nephews on. And so I asked myself, how can I make sure that I live that now, but in the off chance that I check out before 90, and I'm checking out at 90, skydiving and all, in the off chance that that were to happen, how would I make sure that those legacies that I'm already building continue beyond me? So my legacy blueprint had a second phase. So let me make it simple. So it's like an egg. The outside, the shell of the egg becomes the structure. And this is the technical stuff, your will, your endowment, your trust. Speak to someone about doing the technical work. The egg white becomes a social fabric that you build for yourself and the people that you love. And it's not just building it with them, it is also building it around them. Help them build relationships with people that you value. Bring people that you know are good into their lives. And even pay for those people to facilitate dates with your kids. It's that important. But as I was living all of this out, in the last 2 to 3 years, something else has come up, and this is the yolk of the egg. For me, finishing well and building my legacy has taken on a very serious and important part. And for me, it's finding and ensuring that I have an authentic spiritual root. That for me has given me the courage and the ability to look death in the face and say, I know you're coming, and when you come, I will be ready because I am not afraid. I have lived well. I have prepared my children. I know that they are resilient. I have put people around them that I know will care. And I have done the technical work. There is a will. So my finishing well, which has taken almost 14 years really in coming, has been a journey of learning how to live intentionally, learning how to build great relationships, learning how to give of myself, learning how to be there, learning how to be present. So for me, finishing well is living intentionally and making sure that I have a legacy blueprint. Thank you very much.